So a lot of you guys have probably seen the new documentary by Al Jazeera called Gold Mafia. I think it's going to be a 4-part series, but they dropped the first one this past week and it went berserk. I know when I watched it, it had dropped for about 7 hours and it was at about 220,000 views. By the time I woke up the next morning, it was on 848,000 views. And the last I checked today, which is the 25th of March, at about 10 past 3 in the afternoon, we were sitting at over 1.8 million, I think, views. A lot of you guys have seen me sit with Rutendo Matinyarare, who represents Zimbabwe and the positivity of Zimbabwe and some of the issues that are keeping Zimbabwe from prospering as a nation. And you guys have said, look, Rutendo is a ZANU-PF mouthpiece. He must come and explain what's happening there, etc., etc. So for you guys, because I think it's important, not necessarily for me, but for the people of Zimbabwe and everyone else who's got a vested stake in the success of Zimbabwe, I'm going to be sitting with Rutendo today to give his thoughts on the documentary and then maybe to take some questions from me just about the documentary and what's happening in Zim. Rutendo, welcome again.
Thanks.
How are you doing, bro?
I'm doing good, man. How are you?
I'm good. I think I pre-warned you that I'm going to try and go a bit hard on behalf of Zimbabweans who came into my comments saying, yeah, but Rutendo's not the guy. Get Hopewell Chinono or someone else. You've seen the documentary. If you don't mind, just a summary of your perspective on the documentary and what you take out of it.
Right. So I think, first of all, what I would say to clear the air is that you heard people saying, Rutendo is ZANU-PF, he shouldn't be brought onto the show. That is not true. I don't have a political party that I support. I'm not a member of ZANU-PF. In fact, like I've said before many times, there are many people who are asking, why is he doing what he's doing when he's not even a member of ZANU-PF? Who gave him the right to do that? So that is to set the record straight.
Sure.
But that is why it's important for us to have these conversations. Because what are these tropes, these stereotypes, these lies and gossip become reality, and people then get judged by that reality that people make up as they're lying. And that's part of the reason why I began the work that I'm doing. There were lies about Zimbabwean sanctions for 20 years. No one addressed it.
Yeah.
No one took it on. I was the very first person to come, take it on, say to government, we have to go to the United Nations. We went to the United Nations. The narrative changed.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, some of the countries that were afraid and embarrassed to support the Zimbabwean government are now supporting the Zimbabwean government because the truth came out. The same thing has to happen even with this documentary.
Yeah.
It has to be interrogated. We have to find out what are the truths, what are the lies, and what are the tropes, and what is the purpose of the tropes. Yeah.
If you can please give a summary of the documentary from your side. What is the documentary about? For those who haven't seen it, number one, and even for those who have seen it, to hear what your perception of the documentary was.
My perception of the documentary was it was gossip. It was a story that was trying to create an impression that the Zimbabwean government is involved in some form of looting of gold of Zimbabwe. That is the impression that we got when the highlights came out.
Okay.
And the highlights came out 2-3 weeks ago.
Okay.
They gave the impression that the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe is a money laundering machine in Southern Africa.
Sure.
But when I watched the documentary, I never saw that. What I heard from Al Jazeera itself and its own narrative, Zimbabwe is under sanctions. Because Zimbabwe is under sanctions, it cannot trade its gold.
The sanctions thing is still controversial. I still hear people saying Zimbabwe is not under sanctions.
It's crazy that it's controversial because we saw a lady from the FBI sitting there saying that we as Americans, she's an American, part of the system of America, saying we put sanctions on Zimbabwe to remove Zimbabwe from the financial system.
Even the president in the documentary emphasizes that Zim is under sanctions.
Well, we might say that they don't believe the president.
Okay.
But let's listen to the Americans.
Okay.
The owners of the sanctions themselves.
Okay.
They came out. Al Jazeera itself acknowledged the sanctions. Al Jazeera itself said that the selling of gold from Zimbabwe, the utilization of agents who we need to put on record have got licenses, gold buying licenses, gold selling licenses in Africa, not just Zimbabwe. They named South Africa, they named Mozambique, they named a whole lot of other African countries, and then they've got licenses to sell in Dubai, and they've got anti-money laundering certificates.
Yes.
They say that on their own.
Okay.
And they are the ones being used because in Zimbabwe, we've got Fidelity printers that is supposed to refine our gold. After refining our gold, they're supposed to take that gold through to be sold by MMCZ, which is on the sanctions list, besides the fact that the sanctions themselves stipulate in the executive order sanctions that all government of Zimbabwe companies must also be blocked, and you can't trade with them no matter where you are in the world without a license from the US president.
Okay.
So that was confirmed by Al Jazeera, not by Rutendo.
Before you speak, you're saying it has to be confirmed by the American side. So there are companies in Zimbabwe that can trade with other people internationally, but they need to get a license first from the countries that sanction Zim.
Let me stipulate what it says. So what the OFEC executive order sanctions say is that nobody's able to clear funds, to transact, to assist with material, technology, software, logistics, or to trade with the government of Zimbabwe, companies of the government of Zimbabwe, anyone who trades with them, and then there's a list of 144 special designated persons, companies, banks, and institutions. But what we're saying is, once you read the prohibition to do business with the government of Zimbabwe and its companies, we believe that those are collective sanctions on all people of Zimbabwe.
Okay.
And this was confirmed not just by the Americans, but the United Nations itself. Now,
I just want to confirm. So there are companies in Zim that can trade, though. Even though there's all of those others, which generally mean there's a blanket sanction.
Right.
Are there certain companies that are allowed to trade?
No. Because what happens is when you want to trade in America or outside America, and you have to receive payments or you have to make payments, they have to go through a banking system.
Okay.
So all banking systems are said, do not clear funds from the Zimbabwean government, from its companies, people who do business with the government of Zimbabwe. Now, the problem is a lot of people cannot do the due diligence to determine who is doing business with the government of America. So because they're afraid to get penalized, they're scared of secondary sanctions, and they're actually scared of even criminal prosecution.
Okay.
Banks in general, which is the South African banks we are going to court with now, in general say, we will not clear the funds of the government of Zimbabwe. We will not clear the funds of companies belonging to the government of Zimbabwe. And we will not clear funds of generally most companies in US dollar terms, because we're afraid that when we send that money to be cleared in the United States has got an obligation to block all US dollar payments, do due diligence, and confiscate funds of anybody that might be on the sanctions list or somebody who might do business with the government of Zimbabwe. It becomes so difficult, so convoluted. So a lot of people just say, we're not going to transact or clear funds in US dollars for payment of machinery or even payment of resources. So we've got mining companies right now in Zimbabwe that have been doing business, that have sold their resources to the world. Right now, they're waiting for payments. Those payments are blocked by a number of banks.
Okay.
We've got a company called Zisco Steel. I've been talking about it a lot. On their property is a company called Zimchem. Zimchem had done transactions. They deal in chemicals. They're not on the sanctions list. Their money came, it was blocked at FNB. Right?
Okay.
So these are the blockages that happen in the payment system because the US government is blocking when there's clearances that need to happen on the American side, and they're forcing banks to block or be penalized. So that's why we saw Standard Chartered, which is a British bank. It was penalized. We saw Barclays Bank being penalized. We saw a bank called CBZ in Zimbabwe being penalized. However, the moment that CBZ was penalized, they got a chairman from the United States who came in and he decided, this is nonsense. For what reason are we being penalized? And they were told, you're being penalized for transacting Zimbabwean company transactions. ZB Bank. You've been transacting Zimbabwean banking transactions. So we're penalizing you $380 million. And so they went and they challenged that. They got the biggest law firm in the world to challenge that. The United States was not able to prove just cause for its penalization of sanctions that are illegal. So they negotiated with CBZ that, okay, we're not going to penalize you and we're going to remove all our penalties. That is where some of us also learned that the sanctions are unenforceable legally. So that's why we need to start challenging all the banks, South African banks, that are blocking people's accounts, blocking people's payments, and even refusing corresponding banking relationships with the government of Zimbabwe and banks in Zimbabwe without basis. And that's
please carry on. I'm sorry.
So that's another way, again, that the sanctions are being imposed, is that all the banks then say, we don't want to be contaminated by Zimbabwe, so we are going to cut our corresponding banking relationships.
Yeah.
So where I used to do a transaction in Zimbabwe, and then I send through my money to a bank we've got a relationship with in England, in France, in Germany, in Japan, those banks now say, I don't want a relationship with you, so I can't transmit my payment to these corresponding banking relationships.
Sure.
However, what is interesting is the moment we started our case, all of a sudden, we've begun to see corresponding banking relationships coming back. I know Stewart Bank just got a corresponding banking relationship with FNB. And the question we're saying is, what changed?
Sure.
Are you telling me the risk status in Zimbabwe changed? Or are you beginning to understand that because of our case in South African courts, we might have a basis? But let me tell you what. So this documentary came out this week. On Monday, the United States of America, who we also cited in the papers that we have in South African courts, responded and replied to our case after 13 months of not responding.
Sure.
We believe they actually intended to ignore the court papers that were served here in South Africa.
Yeah.
But they eventually responded in the very same 3 days after they responded to our papers, they released the Al Jazeera gold. I believe that has been done intentionally to try and influence the judges and people involved in the case to say we've got just cause to sanction Zimbabweans because they are corrupt.
Yeah.
But when I watched the documentary, I never saw a case where they proved that, number one, the government of Zimbabwe or the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe or any minister in Zimbabwe is involved in anything that is illegal. Al Jazeera itself said Zimbabwe is under sanctions. Zimbabwe has been looking for ways to sell its gold because its company MMCZ, which is supposed to sell all resources of Zimbabwe, and it's supposed to do that to stop transfer pricing. So they created a government institution that says all your resources come through us. We sell them for you guys. We give you your money. We take our money. You don't rob the country. That is under sanctions. So because of that, Al Jazeera says we had to look for agents. The government of Zimbabwe had to look for agents who've got licenses. Those agents now go and buy the gold. And they buy the gold because the government of Zimbabwe, due to sanctions, does not have the money to buy the gold. So these guys go to the miners. A lot of them are artisanal miners.
Yes.
60% of our gold comes from small-scale miners.
60%.
60%.
Artisanal is almost what we call zamazamas.
What you call zamazamas.
Small scale people that are just trying to dig for gold themselves.
Now in Zimbabwe, what we've done with the zamazamas is they've been officialized. They are not illegal like they are in South Africa.
I know in places like Guinea in West Africa, they have a similar situation.
And now they contribute 60% of our gold. And in those zamazamas is more than 1.5 million people employed in that zamazama arena. Okay. And so the dealers go and buy with the gold buying licenses from these small scale miners and artisanal miners. Then they take the gold for smelting to the fidelity printers and refinery. It belongs to the government. Okay. They have to pay. So they've gone to the miners. They pay close to market price for this raw gold. Okay. So they leave the money with the miners, with the small scale miners who don't work for anybody. That gold is then taken to fidelity printers and refineries. It's smelted to a quality that makes it almost pure and certified. And so they have to pay for the service of refinery. Sure. From there, they take the gold. They take it overseas to Dubai, where they've got gold selling licenses. And some of them said that they've even got anti-money laundering clearances. Yes. They sell the gold. They bring the cash that the Zimbabwean government needs. This is not my words. This is the words from the... And the Zimbabwean government takes that money and utilizes that money. Okay. They then take the cash that they made or the profits that they made. They go and buy more gold and the cycle continues. Now, these guys that we call zamazamas in South Africa, these guys that we call artisanal miners and small-scale miners in Zimbabwe, have become, some of them have become multimillionaires. Yeah. Zimbabwe has got a housing boom right now. One of the biggest housing booms in the world because of these very same guys. Uneducated Zimbabweans who had no hope, who've become multimillionaires, who've got money, who can build houses cash, houses cash, who can buy cars cash, who can start other businesses, who can invest in agriculture. That's why we're having the booms in agriculture that we're seeing besides the government assistance because of trading in gold.
One of the interesting things about the documentary is, and I don't know if in the other 3 episodes they're going to create the link. There has been from the first episode, no direct link with Emerson Mnangagwa. There's a link, I don't know if it's to his daughter, I don't know if it's Henrietta, might be her name. Then there's a link to 3 people in particular. Kamlesh Patni, I think, who was in Kenya. Ewan Macmillan, I think. And Simon Rudland. My question to you first and foremost, do you have any relationship with Emerson Mnangagwa, the president? Do you have any relationship or do you know any of these other guys?
I don't have a relationship with Emerson Mnangagwa, but I do know Henrietta.
Okay.
And I don't know the other 3.
Okay.
So
but there was also, a mention of Hubert Angel.
Yes.
Who's a pastor and a prophet as well, who claims that he works as an ambassador for the government and he has some type of powers on behalf of the president.
I've spoken to Hubert Angel once or twice.
Okay.
We're talking about a project that he wants us to work together on.
Okay. Nothing related to gold?
But besides talking, no,
okay.
Not related to gold. It's actually related to telling the good Zimbabwe story.
Okay.
And producing material to that effect. So with Henrietta Rushwai, remember I said that we've got artisanal and small-scale miners that produce 60%
yes.
of the gold in Zimbabwe.
Yes.
She controls the organization that holds 1.2 million of those small-scale miners and artisanal miners.
Like a union of some sort?
Yes, it's a federation.
Okay.
So this federation looks out for or represents 1.2 million people.
Okay.
She makes sure... So, first of all, let me put it like this. I wanted gold for a client of mine that was in Italy.
Okay.
So they said...
Is this a real story or an example?
This is a real story.
Okay. You trade gold as well?
No.
Okay.
But I do get people approaching me.
Okay.
You talk about Zimbabwe. We understand there's a lot of gold in Zimbabwe.
Okay.
Can you assist us to get gold? I know nothing about trading gold.
Okay.
So when I get people who ask me about trading gold, I talk to the people that are in the business. So I know a number of business people, major miners in the country, and I know Henrietta.
Yes.
So instead of going directly to the business people, I want to support the small-scale miners.
Yes.
Because that's where our industry is developing.
Yes.
This is where our economy is being built from. This is where poor people are being taken out of poverty.
Yes.
So I go to Henrietta, say, Henrietta, listen, I've got a person that wants gold. Can you sell me gold? And she says, the first thing is this conversation that you and I are having is a conversation I don't want to have.
Okay.
Because I don't sell gold personally.
Okay.
The government of Zimbabwe is the one that sells gold.
Okay.
So what you can do for me is, can you write me a letter of intent from your client? It mustn't be addressed to you and your company. It must be addressed to my organization, which represents 1.2 million people.
Okay.
And then we will then be able to respond and tell your client what they need to do.
Okay.
So I refuse to tell you by word of mouth what you need to do. I think what she was doing is avoiding the very same recordings.
Of course.
You understand? So my client wrote a letter. He was told what to say in the letter.
Sure.
How much gold do you want? Who are you? What's your name? Because we need to do due diligence.
Yeah.
Then the letter got to Henrietta. She responded.
Yeah.
She said, first of all, we are the Zimbabwe Miners Federation. We represent 1.2 million people. We've got a gold buying license and a gold selling license that we recently got.
Okay.
And the government had gone into a spree in 2021 to say they want to give black people these gold buying and selling licenses because white people are the only ones that had them.
Joshua Maponga actually invited myself and DJ Spoo to come to Zimbabwe, saying on the record in front of camera that if you have 20,000 rand, the Zimbabwean government is willing to work with you to see how you can come and trade with us.
100%. But
this is above board. It's nothing hidden.
You've got to have the money to get the license.
Okay.
That's where a lot of people go wrong. And you've got to be willing to do the paperwork and you've got to know the process.
Okay.
But they don't teach us these things in school.
Yeah.
So anyway, she then told him that we've got a gold buying and a gold selling license from Fidelity. And whatever negotiations we're going to do with you about the gold that you want, because these guys wanted 100 kgs a month for a 12-month period.
Jeez.
So it says the negotiations will be done between you, Fidelity Printers, the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, ZIMRA, which is the SARS or the tax collection, and the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe and Fidelity Printers.
Yeah.
We will and minerals marketing, because in Zimbabwe all the minerals before they leave Zimbabwe they can only be exported by one company, which is the Minerals Marketing Corporation of Zimbabwe, which was created by an act that's called the Minerals Marketing Act.
Is it almost like a department of mineral
It's a company of the
reserves and
government
energy
of
like ours?
it's a government of Zimbabwe.
Okay.
It's a company of the government of Zimbabwe.
Which
So it's
deals
not,
with
it's not a
these things.
department.
It's not a department.
Yes,
Okay.
it's a company. So its job, when it was created in 1982, was to say, we've seen the colonial system was about pillaging Africa. So if we allow the mining companies to take out their own resources,
Yes.
they will under-invoice and they will also transfer price.
Sure.
So we want to stop that from happening. We say to all mining companies, you do not export anything. We do the exporting. And when we do the exporting, we take the resource, we invoice you, you pay the tax.
Yeah.
And only then your product leaves when it's got tax clearances, tax certificates, and it leaves through us. And then you go and sell your product, and then you get your commission or your what you call it from that transaction.
Okay.
They also wanted to bring the money back into Zimbabwe by themselves, so that when it gets into Zim, they can transfer the US dollars into Zim dollars and then give you your money in Zim dollars. That's how it used to work.
Okay.
The Americans then targeted that to stop the government of Zimbabwe from selling its resources, so that the miners, a lot of which are owned by American shareholders, can then begin to market their own products so that they can transfer price. That was the deal. So so these guys got the letter. She also stipulated that we don't want to do business with people who want to pick and pay.
Okay.
Pick and pay means you expect to bring 100 million, find gold sitting on the shelf, take the gold.
Sure.
No. We want you to understand that there is no gold on standby in Zimbabwe. All Zimbabwean gold is already bought to a certain extent, because there are people who've already put cash into the system, going into the miners, buying the gold. So there's no surplus that is sitting somewhere in some vault that belongs to the government of Zimbabwe. So you've got to be willing to do what those other people like Rutland are doing. They bring in their money. The government doesn't have money. They go and buy, as I said. They get charged by the miners.
Yeah.
They pay the miners. Cash upfront.
Yeah.
They bring their gold. They refine the gold. They pay for the refinery.
Yes.
And then they take the product overseas. All on their own risk. Government of Zimbabwe is incurring no risk, but it receives the tax.
Sure.
It receives the processing and refinery costs.
Sure.
So where is it that the stealing happens? Because the miner is not a slave.
Sure.
He works for himself. He doesn't work for a company.
Yeah.
He wants his money upfront.
Okay.
And anybody will give him that money. So if Rutland won't give him that money, someone else will come and give him that money.
So we've covered Henrietta from your side.
Yes.
Hubert, Angel, are you
So
aware?
hold on. So
Sorry,
I want to
sorry.
conclude with
No
Henrietta. So Henrietta made it clear. We want people who come, invest
Yes.
in machinery.
Don't just come and buy gold.
Don't just come and buy gold.
Okay.
And to prove that what Henrietta is saying and what she said in the document works, is that within the period that she came in, 2018, to take over this institution, Zimbabwe has increased its gold production by over 50%.
That's a lot.
And that 50% increase is these small-scale miners that are managed by Henrietta.
Yeah.
And
Are
within
these miners speaking up to defend Henrietta and the work that they do? Or are they quiet?
Zimbabweans don't know how to communicate. And this is why I keep fighting with my own government.
Yeah.
I shouldn't be sitting here to tell you what I'm telling you.
Yes.
Had my government listened when we said, make documentaries. We said that to them in 2019.
Yes.
Make documentaries. Explain to Zimbabweans what is happening in the country, where we come from, why we are where we are, what sanctions mean, what you as a government have got to do to keep this country's critical function going,
Yes.
the risks you have to take, the sanctions busting you have to do. Tell the people in a documentary up front before questions start coming, because attacks will come. Henrietta herself, I told her, you've got to make a documentary, my sister. You're one of the most powerful women in Africa, one of the biggest gold mining women on the continent. There is no one like her in South Africa. There is no one like her on the continent who produces the amount of gold, 60% of a country's gold, through her institution. I said, tell your story.
And I'm guessing at some point the story would be that it's her gold, it's her money, and not necessarily the 1.2 million miners you're speaking about who she's representing.
Unfortunately, she can't do that because if she buys the gold, so for instance, if
But I'm
Henrietta
saying
takes,
it would be an easy way to spin.
Yes,
60% of the gold goes through Henrietta.
100%.
Therefore, she has some type of a monopoly.
100%. But it also explains why she's being attacked.
Yeah.
We've never
And,
had
she's the daughter of the president.
No, she's related to the president, but I can't testify to that because I don't know that for a fact.
Okay.
I've heard that in the
We
media.
had an issue in Angola with Dos Santos and his daughter, Isabel. We've had that in South Africa with Jacob Zuma and Tutuzane. Cyril and Andile, and other what we are told is nepotism type of relationships.
My problem is that why do we call it nepotism when we can measure the results? If Henrietta has increased Zimbabwean gold production by small-scale gold miners by over 50%, that is merit.
Yes.
Tell me anywhere else in the world where they've done that.
Okay.
Tell me anywhere else where small-scale miners have become millionaires and taken themselves out of poverty without an education because of policy that was lobbied for by institutions like the one Henrietta controls to make sure that small-scale miners are not criminalized like they are in South Africa. They're actually seen as a part and parcel of the sector. Now, the problem is, if small-scale miners in Zimbabwe are producing 60% of our gold, it's a threat to the bigger companies.
Of course.
Because when they look at it, they're saying these people are taking our claims, they're taking what we should be mining, and they're benefiting from it. That's a racist and colonial perspective.
You believe that's what's happening with this entire documentary?
Absolutely.
It's trying to crush the small miners through Henrietta.
The documentary seeks to do a number of things.
Okay.
Number one is to block Zimbabwe from trading. Because I keep saying...
Regardless of how it's done.
So a lot of people have been saying to me, yeah, why do you support this government? This is nonsense. I said, I don't support this government. I support facts. Let's look at Zimbabwe today under the current president and this policy of using gold to grow our country.
It was his policy.
It came with his new government.
Okay. Whereas Mugabe gave people land.
He also gave people resources. He also gave people resources,
okay,
but he wasn't as aggressive as what we're seeing here.
Okay.
So let's look at what the current president has made sure happens. More people are able to mine without being criminalized. They are being paid in this hard currency that is coming to them through these buyers.
The agents, who you're saying they basically go around the sanctions.
Yes.
You're an agent, you can buy and sell gold anywhere in the world. You have an anti-money laundering license. You go into Zim, you go through the processes. So by the time you sell, as the documentary alleges, in Dubai, it's not Zimbabwe selling. It's you.
It's the agent
who went through the right channels to sell, and you bring money back to pay for all the refinery and all the type of work you said that Zim does.
And remember, an agent and principal relationship is regulated by the Agency Act.
Okay.
An agent does not carry a principal does not carry vicarious liability for his agent.
Okay.
The agent is a standalone person who must follow agent principles. So when an agent comes to Zimbabwe, buys gold, he's given rules. You buy this gold this way, and you're going to sell our gold this way. You take out the gold in this way out of our country.
This is a known thing internationally?
This is the agency acts
I'm
all
trying
across the
to
world.
figure out, Europe, America is aware that there are agents getting gold in Zimbabwe and selling it, and that's legal. It's above board.
What is supposed to happen is under the European system, which is a colonial system.
Yes.
Our government is supposed to produce gold.
Yes.
The gold is then supposed to go through to Fidelity Printers.
Yes.
Fidelity Printers is supposed to be affiliated to the London Bullion Market Association.
Yes.
From being associated with the London Bullion Market Association, it is then supposed to take the gold out of the country through this Fidelity Printers.
Yes.
Gives our minerals through to Minerals Marketing Corporation, and then the gold goes through the London Bullion Market into the marketplace. Okay. Right? But the
London Bullion Market has got a monopoly on gold around the world.
And it's
They're the gateway to trading.
And not only are they the gateway to trading, they have 7 to 9 European banks and Canadian banks and American banks that sit and make a decision on fixing the gold price on a daily basis. Then they give the market this gold price.
Okay.
So the world is basically taking instructions or price taking from countries that do not have gold production. The only reason that was happening is most of the companies that were mining the gold, Anglo America, Barrick Gold, and them, were owned by these very same European countries. So they were the biggest producers by virtue of their companies being the ones that were producing.
Okay.
So Zimbabwe was removed from the London Bullion Market Exchange, or at least Fidelity Printers was removed. Firstly, because it could not meet the target of 10 tons of gold every single month. Okay. I mean, every single year to be a member. So that was one of the first reasons it was removed. Then sanctions were also an issue because payments between the institutions were going to be hindered because of the blockage of the banking system.
Okay.
So with Fidelity Printers no longer part of the London Bullion Market Association, and with it not able to get payments back through MMCZ, because MMCZ is under sanctions, we had no way to market. So what they would have loved for us to do is to sit with our gold and die of hunger.
Okay.
But no nation would do that, because the UN Human Rights Council itself has got a resolution that they made, because they don't want sanctions. They don't want unilateral illegal sanctions. So they said any country put under illegal sanctions must seek ways to mitigate those sanctions, number one. Number two, no third-party nations are allowed to impose or implement illegal unilateral sanctions, which means banks are not supposed to block accounts and people are not supposed to refuse to buy products from a country that's under unilateral sanctions. And when they do that, they're breaking international law, because they're imposing illegal sanctions, there's discrimination, and there is punishment without trial.
Okay.
So Zimbabwe then said to itself, and this is written in resolution UNHRC 3413. It's a resolution that exists. People can look for it on their own.
Okay.
So the Zimbabwean government, with a mandate to mitigate sanctions,
Yes.
looked for another legal route for it to mitigate what the FBI agent in that video said was Zimbabwe being blocked out from the financial system.
Yes.
They sought to use their gold. And now they've taken it a step further and created a gold coin, which many people are perceiving Zimbabwe is beginning to use gold to become part of its currency and to back up its currency.
Yes.
That makes the Americans uncomfortable. That makes the Europeans uncomfortable. The IMF even wrote in their report in their last visit in December that Zimbabwe must get rid of the gold coin. So Zimbabwe is doing what Gaddafi was killed for doing.
But it's all legal. That was my
All
question.
legal.
Okay.
It's all legal. Now,
those
what
agents
the-
in the
what-
documentary, do you
what-
think they are legal agents?
According to their own testimonies, I can't speak on their behalf because I don't know their papers.
Okay.
According to their testimonies, they've all got licenses.
Okay. To trade gold as
And-
agents legally.
And my understanding is the reason why you saw a predominantly white people going on those flights,
Yes.
predominantly white people taking the gold, is they're the ones with the licenses.
Okay.
All along, they're the ones that had what it takes to apply for the gold license, one. All along, they were the ones that had the knowledge on how it is to apply for gold license.
Yes.
But now I understand that the government in 2021 opened up for more people to come and get gold licenses. So this is where people like Henrietta Rishwaya got their licenses.
Okay.
Now, what a lot of people don't understand is Henrietta applied for the license. So did other black people. Scott Sakupwanya, who's talked about by so many people, they applied for
What's
their
his name?
licenses. Scott Sakupwanya.
Sakupwanya.
Yeah,
Scott.
he's somebody who has been, my understanding is he had a gold license, because I've got a friend of mine who's got a jewelry company.
Okay.
For the past 30 years, their family have had it. And they used to talk about this Scott Sakupwanya because he used to work for the Reserve Bank as a person that checks for licenses.
Okay.
So they come to your jewelry shop, they knock at your door, and they search your what you call it, your safe. They can even do it at home. And if you're seen with gold more than what you have on your license or what you bought as licensed, then you get arrested.
Okay.
So he used to work for that. Then he learned this gold business. He got himself a gold license.
Where do you get the license from?
I don't know. You should apply it from the minerals, from Fidelity Printers or the
So it's
the
a
Ministry
local
of Mines.
Zimbabwean license.
I'm not too sure. It's a local
Okay.
Zimbabwean license, but my understanding is that it works internationally,
Okay.
right? So they've got certain protocols.
It's like getting
that-
a passport here that you can use to travel.
So if you
Okay.
get a license to sell and export, then you've got an international license.
How did you feel seeing so many white people catching flights and moving gold and making money in Dubai, of which the documentary alleges that a lot of that money didn't get back into the country?
So let's go back to the process I just told you.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense to me. The documentary said Zimbabwean government doesn't have money to buy gold.
Yes.
They said that
That's in the documentary.
That's in the documentary.
Okay.
These agents are the ones who've got the money, their own money, that they use to go and buy the gold.
Okay.
Government of Zimbabwe gives them licenses and allows them to go and buy gold so that it can get money, this gold, out of the people
Yes.
and away from smugglers into the system. It's taken to Fidelity Printers. Fidelity Printers and refineries refines the gold. They charge for the gold and they quantify the gold so that it can be taxed.
Okay.
Once that gold is bought, refined, the miner stayed with his money
Okay.
for the value of the gold.
Yes.
Fidelity Printers is refined, it gets its value for the refining.
Okay.
Whose gold is it now?
Belongs to the agent.
It belongs to the agent to go and sell.
Okay.
Now, what I need to understand, I don't know the agency agreements.
Okay.
What I need to understand is that, do they share the margin that is made between the refinery cost, transportation cost, and then bringing back this money to Zimbabwe? Do they share anything as a form of a tax with the government, or do they pay the tax once it comes from the refinery and that's it? I don't know what their relationship
whether they
is.
pay up front or back end,
Exactly.
like an IOU. We'll give you all the thumbs up, go and sell, and then come back and give us our cut, and also declare how much you sold it for. I don't know.
The reason why I'm saying that is that, to me, my understanding of how MMCZ works, the guy buys it from the miners. That gold is his. He comes, he refines it. He pays the refiner. From paying the refiner, my understanding is Zimra comes in, the revenue collection department. Yes. They take their share, right?
Yes.
And as far as I'm concerned, my understanding, MMCZ is the one that was supposed to export on your behalf before, but these guys are exporting on their own. Sure. But for me, the deal is done there. Government of Zimbabwe has got its taxes. The people who dug the gold have got their money.
Yes.
And the refiners got their money.
Okay.
And then what Al Jazeera said is that they take the gold and then they bring it back because the government of Zimbabwe needs US dollars. I didn't understand that part.
Okay.
That I didn't understand. That why do they bring the money back to the Reserve Bank when they have basically paid all the costs all along?
I was asking you, how do you feel seeing so many white people being involved in this process and not a lot of black Zimbabwean people?
I don't mind. Reason I don't mind is that it means that we need to wake up.
Yes. So
right now, Zimbabweans are being caught up in looking for fault. They're hunting for reasons to criminalize either government or other black people without participating in going to apply for gold mining licenses. Maponga told you to apply for a gold mining license. You didn't take up the opportunity.
He did.
Right?
I haven't been to
But there are a lot of white people who are being told by other white people in Zimbabwe that this is how we're making money.
Yes.
We make a good commission. We haggle with the miner. We get the best possible price for our gold. We take it to the refinery. We pay. We get a margin. We go and sell. We make money.
Sure.
And we use large amounts of money to do this. So if I've got a 1% margin on 100 million, we all know what that means.
Sure.
So they talk with fellow white people. They apply for these licenses. We don't.
Yes.
And even when we've heard a documentary like this telling us that there are people making money in gold, instead of learning the process, black Zimbabweans are busy talking about this documentary in poverty without trying to do something about it.
But they also said, for a valid reason, I'll speak about the reason just now. I want to ask two questions. Number one, you said you don't know the gentlemen that were the agents. You said you don't know them. Hubert Angel, are you aware if he's actually an official ambassador of the government or the president? Number one. And then the second question was Al Jazeera. I know you've spoken about them and the people behind the news platform, and if it's potentially a propaganda platform, like we've seen with maybe a CNN, a Fox, some of our South African local News 24, ENCA, and the like.
Where me and a lot of Zimbabweans fight is that I'm supposed to use what I've heard in the grapevine, what I've heard in the media as fact.
Yeah.
So you're asking me, is Hubert Angel an ambassador of Zimbabwe? I don't know.
Okay.
I've read in the media, but to say that I factually know, I don't know. So I can't testify to that.
Because I watched the documentary, and one of the things, I wasn't fully sure if Mnangagwa officially said, this is our ambassador. In the same way, any president, if there's a person out there speaking well about a country, would say, yes, this is one of our people, I know him. And then you can easily quote that as saying, well, this guy is an official person.
Look, the confusion, why I can't comment on Hubert Angel, is that when most people see me,
yes,
they have said it to you, they say it to everybody, I am a ZANU-PF agent.
Yes, and you're paid by ZANU-PF.
And I'm paid by ZANU-PF.
And you're saying this is not true.
And that would mean that in many ways, I am an ambassador of the country.
Yes.
There were even times when we went on social media where it was said by some very prominent South Africans that I'm an agent of Zimbabwe. Yes. But what that means is that if I'm an agent of Zimbabwe operating in South Africa without DIRCO being given my credentials to know that I'm a spy or an agent of Zimbabwe working in Zimbabwe, I'm doing something illegal. What I'm doing
is the Department of International Relations.
International Relations and Cooperation.
Okay.
It would mean I'm doing something illegal. But there is no relationship between me and ZANU-PF.
Yes.
I've never gotten a cent from ZANU-PF.
Yes.
My accounts should be opened, they should be looked at, and it should be vetted whether what I'm saying is correct.
Are you willing to be an ambassador for the country and work for ZANU PF?
I would be willing to be an ambassador for the country and work
Yes.
for the government of Zimbabwe
Okay.
under the constitution of
You don't
Zimbabwe.
have an issue working for ZANU PF and being paid. You'd be
No.
open about it.
Remember,
I'm trying to
we
figure
need to,
out
we
if
need
it
to
was
separate.
true, would you be able to
We need to
say-
separate. We need
Sure.
to separate. ZANU PF is a political party,
like the ANC?
a private organization,
Okay.
right? I have to be a member of that political party
Okay.
to work for that political
Like the
party.
ANC and Lutuli House?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm not a member of ZANU PF. I don't
Okay.
even have a membership card. I've
Okay.
never been to a rally. I don't know the slogan.
Would you be willing if they were willing to offer you? And
Mm.
if you were willing to be a member and get paid almost like being an ANC employee, and would you be open to telling people, guys, I actually work for ZANU PF. They pay me. I'm out here to speak the good message of Zimbabwe.
I have been offered an
Yes.
opportunity to say, would you work for ZANU PF?
Yes.
By some very prominent people, and said
Sure.
no, because my job is to build brand Zimbabwe.
Okay.
Brand Zimbabwe is polarized by political parties.
Yes.
Number two, I don't believe in the Westminster political system that our governments adopted to keep us as colonial puppets.
Yes.
I don't believe in the election cycle that has people electioneering 24/7 all our lives instead of building the country.
Yes.
So I will never be a part and parcel of such a system.
Okay.
But I would work for the government of Zimbabwe.
Okay.
I was given an opportunity to work for the government of Zimbabwe. We didn't agree on terms.
Okay.
Okay? We didn't agree on terms. So I said, no. If they give me good terms that work for me,
Yes.
and if I feel it's worth it, I might consider it. But my responsibility as a brand builder for the country, as a person fighting sanctions, and more importantly, a person who owns my own private company, I'm less inclined to work for government and more interested to be a consultant for government.
I hear you.
So I want to put this on record so that people stop asking
They
this
won't stop.
consistent question.
They won't stop, but at least we'll have the footage so that every time they ask, we'll go and bring that footage so they can see it.
Right. So I was saying in an article I wrote last week, the government of Zimbabwe, like what we are doing now, we've done a great deal for this brand.
Just worried about time.
We've done a great deal for this brand. We've done a great deal to redeem the image of Zimbabwe in the last period. Now,
You've challenged international laws that are oppressing the country.
and we've proved that there are sanctions, and we've proved that they're illegal. We've
Yeah.
gotten the UN involved. We've gotten SADC to start supporting us. Gotten AU to start supporting us. And there's a point I was making that we ran away from. One thing that a lot of people are not taking time to say is, what is the condition of Zimbabwe now with the new president compared to where we were when we were with Mugabe?
Yes.
When we were with Mugabe, you'd go to Zimbabwe with your card from South Africa. You would not be able to withdraw US dollars from the ATM
Okay.
because there were no US dollars in the banking system. There was no US dollars in the country. People were keeping it in their mattresses. Right now, people
like in
are
their sofas, like our president.
Right now, people are still keeping their money in their sofas. 15 million Zimbabweans are keeping their money in their sofas. But there is US dollars at the ATM now. You can go, put in a card, and withdraw more money that I can withdraw in South Africa. You can't withdraw US dollars here. I can withdraw 500 US dollars in Zim from an ATM, right? And the only reason that we can do that is because somebody is generating that foreign currency and those US dollars that are sitting in the banks that didn't used to be in the banks when Mugabe was there and when our economy crashed in 2008.
Okay.
Zimbabwe is nowhere close to crashing like it did in 2008 because foreign currency is in the country. Why? Because of the activities of the very same president that's there now and his government and people like his Reserve Bank governor and the finance minister. What have they done right?
Okay.
They have made sure that the imports are coming in. They've made sure that US dollars are coming in. Where are they coming from? Our biggest export is this gold. Our second biggest export is nickel mates and nickel concentrate. Those are things that are being produced by these very same miners who make their money and then buy jackhammers and then buy machinery and then buy tools from the very same US dollars that they get paid that people are saying is being looted. Looted by who? When you pay the miner.
You guys are also going into lithium soon.
Yes.
Before you speak about Al Jazeera, one of my mentors that I spoke to about the documentary asked, how do you smuggle your own goods? How do you say I'm smuggling my own gold from my own nation and selling it to a willing buyer? Who decides that it's being smuggled?
And this is what you see, you and I, we shift a lot, so we sometimes don't home in on the point. So that's what I wanted to say, that when we adopted a system where African gold must be decided, and its price must be decided by the London Bullion Market Association.
Yes.
And then we think that doing that is the right process. That's stupidity. It's stupidity for Africans to have other people telling us the price of our goods. Yet the oil countries, the oil-rich countries that are doing better than African countries,
Yes.
determine the price of their own oil by
100%.
creating a cartel called OPEC.
100%.
Why should we go to the London Bullion Market Association? And why should anyone who doesn't go through the London Bullion Market Association be criminalized as a smuggler of their own resources?
DRC, Zimbabwe, South Africa, gold should be determined here, not there, which tells us we're still a colonial state.
And we're stupid because now we got Zimbabweans and South Africans sitting and saying the government of Zimbabwe is corrupt just because it didn't take its gold through to the London Bullion Market Exchange and did not sell it to those people who determined that they wanted to be sold to them. And let me tell you another thing people never talk about. We've got a standard gold price that is set by these players, I'm telling you.
Yes.
But did you know that there are people who buy gold at higher prices than the set price because they believe that gold has got other values besides the intrinsic value of being a store. I mean, besides the value of being a store of value, gold is being used for other things that border on conspiracy theory and the esoteric that they use that gold for, and they are amassing loads of it, and they're willing to pay higher prices
I can
than the
believe
market
that.
price.
Like the rhino horn also had a lot of conspiracy theories and things that people claim they use it for.
Well,
Conspiracy theory stuff.
let's look at it this way. When Zimbabwe was at its zenith as the Mutapa Empire, we had loads of gold that were found within our monuments, gold that was used on doors, gold that was used to make ornaments. Here in South Africa, you have the golden rhino from Mapungubwe.
Mapungubwe.
What do you think what that was all about? You go to London, you see all their statues have got gold. They've got gold tops. You go to Paris, you look at the obelisks that they've got gold tops. What is it about gold that they need it so much for and want to make sure that we don't have it and we don't control it? Why did America go into Libya and take their gold? Why did they go into Iraq, defeat the country, kill millions of people and take their gold? And they were assisted to destroy these two countries, to take their gold by Al Jazeera. And then Al Jazeera's got a problem with what we do with our gold. We need to wake up.
The royal kingdom, the royal monarch in Britain and the United Kingdom have still not brought our gold bars back. And those were not called smuggled.
Not only that, the queen who's passed away, whatever her name was, and
Elizabeth, say it with your chest.
The fact that I have to call someone like that, an evil person like that, a genocidal maniac, a queen, it hurts me. So this new guy, her son,
King Charles, say it with your chest.
He's got a carriage made from gold that came from Africa. Right? How did they get that gold? It wasn't laundering then. It wasn't stealing then. It wasn't looting then. When they took our gold, used our people who they didn't pay salaries and exported our gold without leaving anything for us, the people. But today, when we export our own gold, we're smuggling our own gold. How stupid!
You don't
is
watch
that?
movies. The first Black Panther, Michael B. Jordan plays a character called Killmonger, where he ends up in a museum, and he tells this lady he wants the vibranium, which is a metaphor for all our minerals in Africa. And she says, no, you can't buy that. And he asks, how do you think it got here?
100%.
Do you think your ancestors paid a fair price?
100%.
Al Jazeera, the people that founded it, do you believe it's a propaganda machine like other media platforms out there? And do you think part of the propaganda is to help Africa remain a dark continent?
Well, the history of Al Jazeera is well documented. It was started by two Jewish brothers. And these two Jewish brothers are suspected to have been Mossad because they were friends with the Prime Minister of Israel who had just been murdered. And they then created this channel because they said they wanted to create dialogue between the Jewish community and the, the Arab world. They tried to start this station in Saudi Arabia. And they were in partnership with BBC.
Okay.
And Saudi Arabia gave them terms that they could not accept.
Okay.
So then they crossed over and went to Qatar. Now, when they went to Qatar,
These are oil-rich nations, both of them.
Oil-rich nations.
Arab nations.
Yes. But the interesting thing about Qatar is that the king who was there at that point had been brought into power by a coup where he removed his own father and was put there after coming from military school in England, and he was assisted by the Americans and the British. So he accepted what Saudi Arabia had refused. Saudi Arabians had seen something unacceptable about the offer being given by these two Jewish gentlemen, Zionists, and the BBC.
Yeah.
So eventually they got accepted to open this channel
Yes.
in Qatar. And initially, they started with a very pro-Arabic narrative.
Okay.
Until they built up their audiences to 5 million viewers. And the moment they did that, then the strategy changed.
Okay.
This is when Al Jazeera was then used. Even when it was an Arabic channel, it was part of the drivers in its Arabic channel to talk about the weapons of mass destruction that Saddam Hussein had, the threat they were to the region, and why it is that intervention was necessary. And they co-opted American Iraqis that were in exile in America to also start standing up and lobbying for the removal of Saddam Hussein and regime change.
Weapons that have never been found to this day.
Weapons that have never been found. So it's built on lies. And it's built on lies that have destroyed over 3 million lives, killed 3 million people, got 3 million people murdered for the Americans to take over the oil of the region.
And set up military bases around those bases today.
And remember, they didn't just go to Iraq to fight for oil. They were fighting for water as well.
Okay.
The Tigris River and the other rivers, freshwater rivers that run through Iraq.
Yeah.
And they wanted the seeds. Iraq had the biggest seed collection of wheat together with Iran now. And the very first thing the Americans did is when they got in there, they destroyed that wheat and they brought in their own GMOs. I don't want to go there right now. But it's part
I'm just worried about time. We've got, I think, 15 minutes.
So
I think 10 minutes.
So that was part and parcel of the problem. Then Al Jazeera was instrumental in ensuring the Arab Spring. They're the ones that instigated all these youth, together with an institution called Canvas. Canvas belongs to a guy called Popovich. Popovich is funded by the Soros Open Society, the Americans, the CIA, and Vanguard. They're the ones that then began to drive the youth with misinformation and disinformation about the leaders of 6 Arab countries. But while they were destabilizing these 6 Arab countries, they were making sure that the youth who wanted to rise in Bahrain and Yemen wouldn't rise because the governments of Bahrain and Yemen were supported by the United States. So they toned down and made sure there was no uprisings in the 2 countries, Bahrain and Yemen, while they're making sure that there was going to be an uprising in Libya, Tunisia, Egypt, and what's the other country I'm missing there? And Syria.
Sorry.
Today, more than 2 million people have died in that region. Libya, the most successful and most prosperous country in Africa, is no longer.
Yes.
And now we have slave trade of black people there now. That country is finished. Iraq is finished. Syria is finished. Afghanistan, finished. And Al Jazeera was at the back of this, to the extent that this is how much they went to the propaganda of going into studio and creating a green screen and creating what is called Green Square in Libya to make it look like it had been taken over by the rebels a week before it was taken over by rebels, which made a lot of the soldiers of the Iraqi government just give up, walk away from their posts. And that's how the...
this is stuff that can be verified.
This is stuff that's there to read. You understand? So
I want to say this.
So if they can go to those extents to remove Gaddafi, they can create a studio where they create lies. What then happened with their documentary where we saw an ex-convict who's been convicted for gold smuggling, talking and telling us about how he's doing what he's doing.
Yes.
And he even admits in one of the places that we will clean your money, but the government of Zimbabwe and the governments of Dubai don't know that we're cleaning dirty money. That's the only legal thing that we're doing, and these 2 governments don't know. He said it with his own mouth, but he was drunk. He was drinking while he was saying this thing. Then we've got the other gentleman who's a pastor, the Indian guy. He says he's got a license. He says that he's got a clearance for money laundering, and he speaks and says we are part of the reason why the Zimbabwean economy is not crashing now and is doing better because of what we're doing with gold. Then we've got Hubert Angel. Hubert Angel is clearly a very flamboyant person.
Yes.
He's got very flowery language. He believes that you can take 1.2 billion and put it in a suitcase and walk with that suitcase off an aeroplane. Yet we all know that you need a truck to carry 1.2 billion.
People don't know. They need to be told.
People don't think.
People don't know what a billion looks like.
They don't know what a billion looks like.
Yes.
A billion requires a truck. It requires even a 2-ton truck to carry it. Why? Because it's a lot of money. You can't carry it in a briefcase. The fact that Hubert Angel could say that is puffery. And the puffery that you saw Hubert Angel doing is typical of Zimbabweans. I've also seen black South Africans exactly the same. We exaggerate, we lie, we say we know the president, and I can take you to the president tomorrow. Imagine how many times I've heard of people telling me that you're doing such a good job, we can take you to the president tomorrow. It never comes, never happens. I've even got top business people in Zimbabwe who have made me promises. Right now, our case, we've got a case in the courts of South Africa. The Americans have responded. We were promised huge money to back us up on this case. And the very same people that have promised us those things with such flamboyant language, even encouraged us to start the case, are now backing off. It's the nature of people. Black people love to lie. They love to make promises they can't deliver on. And that's what's happening when I see our pastor speaking. He's just that guy. He speaks a lot. Talks a lot.
Thank you. I want to shut this thing down. But before I do, a lot of people never look at the disclaimers at the end of the documentary. There's a whole lot of things that are put on the screen trying to basically state that, look, all of these things are allegations. Some of these things have not been verified. People don't really read that because the story has already sold whatever it's sold. Thank you for sharing your side. I'm hoping that as the other episodes unfold, we can do the same. I hope you understand that a lot of people are still going to attack you. I'm hoping that those that do challenge you when this video comes out are also going to have their own articles and things to refer to, and are not just going to bash you for the sake of bashing you. From your side, your last personal opinion. Number one, do you believe there is corruption in Zimbabwe? Generally, just your personal opinion. And number two, do you feel from what you see when you visit home, do you feel like Zimbabwe is currently being revived and that it is going to become a strong economy and a strong nation where Zimbabweans can once again leave London, South Africa, and go home and rebuild Zimbabwe into becoming great?
Yes, I believe that there is corruption in Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
Any capitalist system is built on corruption and primitive accumulation. Those who own capital have to steal it, or they have to exploit somebody else to take the excess value that is created by other people so that they can accumulate it. You're not going to make $1 billion by being fair and paying people what they're worth. You make $1 billion by taking what is not yours.
Okay.
You are going to make even the legitimate businesses. One of the reasons I fought with one of the biggest business people in Zimbabwe on the issue about him having a legitimate business is I kept saying to him, listen here, you got a license to own, to control our airwaves for you to have a cellular network. It was given to you by a government that closed out competition from South Africa, America, Britain, so that you as a black person can be empowered. White people call that nepotism when it's done by black people. White people call that corruption and discrimination. We call it empowerment, indigenization. So now that you've got this network and you're a billionaire, don't come here and tell us that you made yourself. You understand what I'm saying? So that was, to some extent, constructive corruption. The same is happening in mining. The same is happening everywhere. I support constructive corruption. I support making sure that we fix the injustices of the past by giving favoritism to certain black people. The sad part is not all black people can get those opportunities. For me, if we could spread that opportunity to a number of consortiums of black people who can get mining licenses, mining rights, and they all enjoy and everybody benefits like what they do in the Arab countries where they all share in the oil, it would be good. But we can't share in the oil as long as we're going to the London bullion market. They're setting our prices for our gold. We can't do that. But the oil countries can because they can withhold supply and the price goes up. They make huge profits. The whole nation can survive off that. We need to do that. That can't happen if countries like Zimbabwe are destroyed, regime change happens, and puppets come in and they begin to return all our resources back to whites and utilizing the London bullion market exchange and making sure that we get dictated terms and prices by other people. There's the other question that you asked. So why I speak about some of these things, and Zimbabwe is improving.
Okay.
You can see it, you can feel it. The Americans can see it, they can feel it, and they want to stop it. That's why they don't like it. The millions of young people who are becoming huge multimillionaires, they got $100,000 in cash. In Zimbabwe, I can't afford to buy a house. It costs $4,000 for you, $400,000 for you to get a decent house. Nothing great.
400,000 US dollars.
Yes.
That's a lot of money.
In a mediocre suburb. That's 8 million
times
rand.
17.
And Zimbabweans are buying these houses cash. Guys are buying $1 million homes, $3 million homes. We've got business people that are building $15 million homes cash. That's how much money is in that economy. And the reason why houses prices are so high is because people are building. Lastly, why you see me fight to give narratives and to force people to listen to the other side of the story is that you've heard allegations that I sleep with 16-year-old women and I'm a pedophile. And all that comes from having a video where I made a video saying I was raped by my maid when I was 3. When I was raped by my maid when I was 3, I believe that destroyed my mind from a sexual perspective, because there's a time in my life where I was sexually perversive. I was a pervert. I would have orgies. I would do all these crazy things. And it has taken a long time for me to heal from that, because I had to accept that the rape did something to me that changed my sexual behavior. But the sexual behavior was not criminal. It was immoral. It was a sexual behavior that a man who intends to build Africa cannot be associated with. But I did it. I spoke out in order to try and help our people understand that there are many men who are causing a lot of pain on women. Some have become rapists because of the damage and the things that happen to them. But then someone, a white Rhodesian, who's in England, takes that and he twists my words. He said, in the sexual activities that I was doing, in this sexual debauchery, in these orgies and things that I spoke about, and this sexual addiction that I had, I was busy raping women. And that hurts me. Because now we've got black South Africans running with it without knowing where it came from, based on allegations. But this is what the apartheid government did. Black people are corrupt. Black people are stupid. We don't get jobs today because we are allegedly stupid. When you support tropes, when you support lies that are used and stereotypes that are used to demean people, that are used to demean Zimbabwe, get it sanctioned. Let Zimbabweans die of sanctions because their government abuses people. You as a black person are supporting what the whites and the white system has used to destroy us all along, which is allegations, tropes, and stereotypes. We need to end that.
Thank you so much for unloading that. I'm hoping we'll speak about that more in future, especially because it's very important for young boys, young men, for our women out there, especially those that are rape victims, to hear some of these conversations so that they can understand the psychology of men out there, to fix them in their young boys, to fix them in their brothers, to fix them in their husbands, etc., so we can have a better society.
And we need people to understand. We need people to understand what it does to you.
Yeah.
I grew up with a fetish thereafter for women who come from the villages because of that.
We'll talk about
fetish, but we'll talk about it some other time. Yeah, but I want boys to know that they need to heal and they need to accept, and people need to accept that society is not men who rape.
Yeah.
Sometimes those men are turned into monsters by what happens to them at a young age.
Thank you. Guys, thank you very much for tuning in with myself and Rutendo Matinyarare. If you've got any questions, please drop them below. If you've got anything that you disagree with, I know you guys sometimes disagree with him, please do so. It allows some of us to learn. It helps me be able to ask maybe better questions of himself and other people in Zimbabwe. As a South African, I care about my neighbors. As much as some of them are here illegally in the country, it is because they don't have good conditions back home. And we'd like to help them fix their conditions back home so that they can go back, fix their home, and then help us as black South Africans to fix our home as well. Please go watch the documentary if you haven't seen it. Gold Mafia by Al Jazeera. Kudos to Al Jazeera for doing the work. Maybe we may criticize the work that you're doing, but please carry on with the work and don't only end it with the Zimbabwe. Please go to America. Please go to the United Kingdom. Go to Europe. Go to parts of Asia and go and tell these stories that you're doing. Otherwise, it does look like you guys are biased and you don't want us to prosper as an African continent that comes from the history of slavery, colonization, oppression, exploitation, the stealing of our resources, and the breaking of the psychologies of Africans on the African continent. Penuel the Black Pen. I look forward to chatting to you guys again soon. Cheers.